Lisa and I met the English crew at the World Championships last year, and they were impressed with our saddles, and they were impressed with what the horses did that were under them at the ride, and we were happy to bring saddles over here and get them tacked up. Even more so, we feel like we hopefully spread a little information as we go about how to check for back soring and how to properly saddle your horse and where the saddle should be on the horse.
Well, I don't have a sore horse around this place to palpate and show you what the reactions are from soreness, but I do want to go through how you should go ahead and use your saddle when you first get it, why we've designed some of the things the way we have, and what'll happen if you should do something like toss a pad underneath it. This whole saddle and the concept is a system. It's not just Orthoflex saddle, because we put this system under other saddles. If you have a roping saddle or a good Western saddle you've had for years and you don't want to just say, oh, it doesn't work anymore and I'm going to throw it away, nobody does that, then you can send it in. You can have the Orthoflex system put in your saddle. If you do, you're going to get a pad. You get a pad that looks very similar to this. We have them in different colors: brown, black, and gray. This pad is not very thick. It looks like wool felt on top. It's a closed loop pile nylon cloth. It does not get wet on the top. Has a 1/4 inch of wool felt, only 1/4 inch of high quality wool felt, and a tiny small bit of fleece. If you're a trail rider, you spend a lot of miles out on the trail, or a distance rider, whatever, and you want heavier fleece, we'll put it on for you. But typically, the Western rider in competition or just a trail rider doesn't want the fleece showing around the edges, and you don't need it, because this system needs no padding to work with your horse. We do make a no pad system that you can buy built into the saddle, and you just ride with nothing. People look at you kind of funny, but we have BRCA ropers, we've got cutters, and we've got team pinners, and we have barrel racers that are riding without a pad and have been for quite a few years now. We make the saddle so it doesn't get sweat soaked in the leather and things like that. It doesn't harm it, and it's easy to clean underneath. This pad is made for a very specific reason, contoured, so that you can slip the front of it up underneath the front of the saddle. But this pad doesn't come standard with the saddle. You have to pay extra for it. I'll show you what comes standard with the saddle, and then you'll understand why we make this pad the way we do. Part of the reason is it has balance shims, and these pockets are to go ahead and put the balance shims in. This is a Navajo model. We actually cut a Navajo apart and we seam it to go ahead and have the contour on the top, so it can be stuffed up in between the spring panel skirts that's going to sit under your saddle. These are the balance shims that go into the pad or the booties that you're looking at on this saddle. They come apart. They can be moved back and forth on each other. If you notice, you have one small layer that's rounded. You have a little larger layer that's still rounded, and they are stair-stepped on the top inside edge. They're done that way for a very specific reason. Now, you can move them back and forth, and you'll see that the pocket is set back quite a ways here. When you put these in, you put the largest foam 1/4 inch layer against the horse. You slip them up inside here. If you have a horse with a big hollow behind his shoulder, really dishes in a lot, like a lot of roping horses have, and big horses will have it more. The more they're ridden, the more they get it a lot of times. Then you short these balance shims, and you make sure they're sitting on the horse when your saddle's on there, dropping into that hollow behind that shoulder. If you don't have that situation and you have a smooth shoulder like we do on this, we've got a little bit of dish here on this horse, but he hasn't been ridden in a while. So we're going to have those balance shims. The back of the scapula is right here. You can feel it. We're going to have those balance shims sitting right here. Now, do we have to have them? No. The saddle still, quote, fits the horse. These don't fit the saddle to anything except where you really have a big hollow. You can fill in that hollow behind the shoulder, and the shoulder doesn't have to rotate with carrying all of the weight of the rider on the front of that skirt. The skirt's flexing for this shoulder as it rotates, but if we carry weight with those balance shims in here on that kind of horse, we free the shoulder up, because even with the skirts flexing, the weight's still there, and you miss it for a little ways with a big hollow. That skirt and the rigging is designed so that that saddle is going to ride right up here just on this shoulder. The bigger the horse, the further back of the shoulder. The smaller the horse, the further over the scapula that the skirts will ride. And this is just the way horses are built and the amount of room we have for the saddle. It works both ways. It can be used completely behind the scapula. It can ride up over the scapula this far, not any further than this. If you ever get a saddle that's riding up over that scapula as the horse is standing about this far, then call us, let us know, send it back to us. We'll reset the rigging to hold that saddle back on that horse. Small downhill cutting horse or the same in an Arabian can do that for you. Those are the two that's most likely to. 1 out of every 300 or 400, 500 saddles, we have to go ahead and adjust this yoke rigging to keep the saddle back further. The reason we don't use much padding here is very specific. The guys that made the pressure sensor saddle pad testing device, all computerized, found one thing. Of course, I found it years before, and that is the more padding you put under a saddle, the more it pinches on the top, inside, on the top of the wither, right on the inside edge where the bar ends and the fork begins, right here. This is called the gullet, and it's right where the bar meets the gullet that pinching takes place with a lot of padding. What you see on this saddle is what comes standard on all of our Western saddles for the padding, and it's called booties, because you slip them on like a pair of boots. I'll take this one off right here first, and we'll just get rid of it. You unvelcro it, slip it off the top, pull it down there, and right off the rear. The booties are standard with a saddle because they're about the most convenient thing you can use with our saddle, allowing the skirts to move very freely. The reason we have this rise in the front of the pad is for that as well. I want to show you what comes inside your saddle. You'll get it with, if you get it with the booties on it. If not, you've got the pad. You can see the balance shims in those. Balance shims will be inside these booties right here. And they are the shape of the skirt in front. Again, you can unvelcro the layers and move them back. You can slip these balance shims back in to this booty. I'm going to go ahead and put this saddle on the horse right quick, give you an idea of how to cinch this saddle up. Drop yoke rigging, and the way we've done it is a little different than a regular saddle. I'll slip this pad on here. Oh, Red. I've got that pad to where I'm just over the shoulder. It ought to be about where this rigging is going to set, where this saddle can ride. I put my saddle in the middle of that, just a little pad on each end. I'm going to put my hand up underneath here and slip this up in between those skirts right there. Now again, this isn't going to ride this way forever. It'll work down a little bit. See where our rigging is at, right in the heart girth area. That's why I designed a neoprene girth in the first place, because I knew I had to have this rigging to put a saddle on the horse where it needed to be. And when I figured that out finally, it was a little hard to get a girth that would not cinch sore horse. Going through that girth once, And then again, second time is all that's really necessary. You can do more if you need to. Putting this saddle a little bit off center to the off side. Pushing against this horse, holding onto that yoke, getting hold of this latigo and pulling out, just like that. So you push and pull. You see the horse, even though I tightened as tight as I can do a girth, horse didn't throw a fuss. We didn't even have to straighten out the little rubber on the girth here, the flap there, that can curl under. If you pull like this, you'll never get it really tight. And here you're pulling out and away from the horse's body, and you're cinching up without damaging, pinching skin, etc. And the horse will put up with it. Get that tongue locked down here. Once you're tight, you are tight. It's too tight if you were riding this way. But again, you over-tighten on the ground. Once you've done this a few times, you'll learn how much to over-tighten on the ground. In doing that, check your cinch while you're on the horse. You should be able to go ahead and pull that out and have a little bit of play while you're on the horse. You can't do it now, and he's blowing up a little, but not that much. I still put latigo holders up here for somebody that's in a big hurry, but we don't put them up here on all the saddles, just a few, and they're rather optional. We always put it in the yoke rigging so that it is then absolutely out of the way. You've got a smooth shot for this fender now to slide, and we do have a very free swinging fender. On cutting saddles right now, they don't want it to swing back so much. We're putting a slot in the bar of the tree like the old Santa Fe saddle tree for the stirrup straps. It gives you more adjustment room. You can roll your fender around, pull it way up underneath, and ride much shorter than you can the way we used to do the loops, and which did not let the fender go up very far toward the saddle tree. So we discontinued the loops. We started doing the slots. The angle slot on a cutting saddle places that stirrup and strap out here more freely, more readily, and doesn't let it swing as far back as readily. We go over the bar of that tree with biothane and with 8,000-pound test nylon webbing. That 8,000-pound test nylon webbing in an Orthoflex runs underneath the oil boot leather on the fender, in between it and the top grain saddle skirting, all the way up from the blevins on one end, all the way over, down and around, and one piece to the blevins on the other end, to where the holes are on the strap, in other words. So you've got a one-piece 8,000-pound test nylon webbing. No cutting, no sewing, and no riveting to hold the assembly together, except where the leather's held in place and where the biothane is held in place that extra reinforces where it goes through the slot in the tree. Right now, the stirrups are a little short, but I'll go ahead and swing a leg on old Red here. Hello, Red. And I've done no more than climb up here and sit down. I can reach down here and I can pull the girth out, 1.5 inches. The strap right there where the latigo strap. It's not tight anymore. When you get off, don't let your horse stand around with it cinched. You're going to think that it is that loose. No. I've shaped these spring panels to this horse. When I get off, they will rebound a little bit. So you control the float by running tension on the girth to where you have a snug girth. A little bit of float is fine. A whole lot, you have a tendency to rub the skin of the horse with the saddle, particularly with the booties. The pad isolates it a little more than the booties. Too many people ride too loose. So just have it to where it is snug. You can pull it out maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inches. If you're not snug, then go ahead and get a hold of it here and do that. And thumb it through again. And it's all designed to do it while you're in the saddle, so you can set it while you're there. It's not complicated. There's no knot there. If I have a knot there, my leg's swinging back and forth against that. Well, Red, my goodness, don't you know I'm swinging my leg? I didn't mean to kick you in the mouth. At any rate, do that all day over a cinch knot tied in the bottom of this yoke. You'll put fluid into the skin under that knot. It happens on pack saddles, happens on regular saddles. It's uncomfortable for the rider, and you'll have a little patch of roaning of white hair there when the horse has the next coat change. Nothing under your leg right here but horse. This yoke also pulls the shape of this saddle down to the horse. So when you are giving aids, squeezing, half halting with your thighs, the horse can feel it. And you have very good close direct contact. You'll notice that the saddle looks more like a saddle with skirts up against the tree now. It's hard to picture them, even at shows. People say, well, it looks a little strange, because there's that space between that skirt and that saddle tree. We have that space there so these skirts can work freely. We have to set this system, spring panel system, out away from that tree, or we are restricted by the shape of that rigid object called a saddle tree, which our main objective is to go ahead and isolate the rigid object from the moving horse's back and do it with close contact here with this system. Don't put a thick pad on again. All you will get when you do is pinching. It will pinch on an Orthoflex, and I only have so much room, and I can widen, I can change the angle, I can bend for that shoulder as it rotates, but you add 2 more inches under here, and you're going to pinch with the top edge of those spring panels against that wither. This is the low-down roper, and one of the things that the ropers love about this spring panel system is the fact that the more weight or pressure you put onto the front of this saddle tree, the more it locks into place on that horse. Now you can see we're short on clearance here. There's a few horses that this will go ahead and possibly interfere with the wither on. I'm raising this fork 3/4 of an inch. Calf ropers love this thing, but guys, for the first time ever, we don't put a rise in the seat of our saddle, our roping saddles, to make it look like the fork is low, and then put all the padding underneath the thing between the saddle and the horse. We're down there close to the horse. First time the ropers ever had to go ahead and reach down this far to dally. It's new to them. The low dally roper is the other model of roper that we have. It's 3/4 inch higher than this roper. I am going ahead and putting the fork, I'm raising it that 3/4 of an inch to the same as the low dally, which everybody feels at home with immediately. I'll still have this nice low one available for the ropers, the steer wrestlers, which Dale Urich is using right now and winning to beat the band in steer wrestling, because the saddle is so stable. When you go to get off this saddle, it does not move. It doesn't go sideways because you've increased the weight on the front of it. When roping or when stepping off, it stays in place like it should. There's only one horse we've ever had this saddle hit the wither on. Red has a little bit of wither here, doesn't he? More than most quarter horses you'll find. And when we put this in place, even without a pad, it's going to ride right here on him, because our rigging, our dropped yoke, has positioned this saddle for us. Go right into the heart girth area. You cinch behind there, think you can get away with it with a regular saddle. You ride a little bit, it'll slide forward and loosen most of the time. Right now, I have a full 2 fingers of wither clearance on this horse with no pad. Put the pad on with the balance shims, I'll pick up 3 fingers. So the very few horses this fork will drop down on. Got to be a pretty high withered thoroughbred type and pretty slender in front. This saddle, yeah, like I say, all of our roping saddles have a cutting seat, so you get down close to the horse and you have good close contact. We have this cutout in the skirts of all of our saddles now, the square skirted saddles, because it lets us change angle, flatten with no pressure, change angle in the rear to that horse and move with him without restricting things and rubbing on the edges where the leather becomes too stiff to make the angle change from the front to the rear. Let me show you right quick the drop yoke and how it's built so you know what's holding this saddle on. We eliminate a lot of bulk with it. It's a full top grain piece of saddle skirting. On top, it is attached with heavy stainless screws in the front and the rear, and then it has a layer of oiled boot leather underneath. This rides, it's very smooth here. These rivets are countersunk nicely. Our people take extra effort to do this. It rides right against the horse right here. And it gives no problem against a horse without a pad because it's used with the no pad system. There's 2 layers of 8,000-pound test nylon webbing. They cross, they go to the front and the rear, but there's a kick out in all of our yokes. That kick out is designed so when you tighten here, you slightly loosen here, just momentarily, so you don't pull your saddle forward when you cinch up. It's very precise in where it is placed as to the front of this spring panel so that that spring panel will work with the rotation of that shoulder. And only 2 horses that I seem to run into it with once in maybe 100 or 200 or 300 animals. That's a small downhill Arab or a small downhill cutting horse to where we have to kick the yoke a little further forward to scoot the saddle back. So if your saddle ends up with the spring panels anywhere from about right here, the shoulder, excuse me, the scapula to the spring panel from about here to clear out to here, you're okay. Like I said earlier, that's acceptable because we still have all of this movement available for that animal as his shoulder rotates. That scapula rotates back and forth 3 to 4 inches. And when it runs into the front of the saddle tree, where's the way the fleece, right where the bar of the tree is in front, all the way through your layers of saddle padding and everything. Try to give you a little bit of visual here. If I bend the ends on this skirt, the middle pushes away. I don't know if you can see how far, but look up under here and see the daylight and see the saddle tree. You see my whole hand goes under here. And easily, little pressure does it take to do this. If I can get this to where I maintain a little pressure on the front of the skirts. The weight of the saddle does it. You add your weight, concussion doubling, quadrupling your weight, and you let the horse bend, in this case to the right, and this spring panel is going to bend like this and follow his exact movement and not restrict it whatsoever. Because on the right side, he shortens, he bends. On the left side, he flattens, and this goes completely straight and maintains contact with him on the left side when he's turning to the right. Because, again, we have those little pedestals letting us flatten out a little more than the saddle tree actually is built for your seat. But here, we turn around and curve more than any saddle tree that's ever been made to drop down in behind those shoulders in that thoracic vertebrae region of the back where the horse does his most bending possible. A saddle forever has been a very effective splint. 2 bars with cross braces front and rear, fork and cantle, strapped in the case of a Western saddle very tightly, front and rear for competitive purposes. It makes a great splint on your horse's back to keep him from moving naturally and impinges on movement with that horse in the front unbelievably against those shoulders. That's why we built the yoke rigging. When you have a conversion done, it's got a yoke rigging. It's positioned to these skirts. These skirts are set at exacting angles. We spend a lot of time to do it. When we make a saddle tree, we set it up perfect. We have that tree to where everything then fits. We've got to take an old one and do it that's maybe set up a little crooked, because nobody's going to know the difference. It's production specifications. We have to then even the mountings of these spring panels and that skirting system. You can see that skirting system a little more clearly right here. Inside this leather skirt is a polymer that is a spring. It's a better spring than spring steel. We pioneered the use of it as a spring. It's a glass-filled acetate. When you bend the ends, as I showed you, the middle pushes down and away. If you just bend the front end, the middle pushes down until you let go, see? So it's operating from those pedestals, and the pedestals are the fulcrum point for the lever that is then made from this spring panel. We make this spring panel to where it bends with a lot of tension here, a lot of pressure to bend it here, so that we carry that bending movement into the middle. So we also turn around and make this spring panel flex very softly against those withers and change angle this way. That was one of the more difficult things. The things people cannot understand is how we can carry weight off of pedestal here without a pressure point underneath. It's called progressive loading. That means it's impossible to get a pressure point under here because it's stiffest there. And then it becomes more flexible out toward the edge.
I also have a saddle. This is what I use on my good horse. I've been testing this system. It has an Orthoflex system in it. And I've tested this system on my horse this past year. I think the first roping that I took this system to was the U.S. roping here in Scottsdale last February. And then I took it to the two-back roping down in Tucson, and Jake and I won the two-back roping with riding this system. It took a couple of weeks for me to really notice a difference, but this past year my horse has really improved in the way that he works, and I'm certain that this system has had a lot to do with that. I really like this Orthoflex system.
John, you started riding our saddle, the Baron Model G, back in about 1989, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I've had it for several years, 3 or possibly 4 years now, and I've ridden it constantly, and I have done just about everything with it. As I said, from roping steers to roping horses to uphill and downhill. But this is not only just super comfortable for me and has been an excellent wearing saddle, but it's just dynamite, you know, for the horses. So the system itself is a great system, but not only the front of the saddle, but the back of the saddle movement. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off of the kidneys of that horse, you know, in the back of his, you know, his back. A lot of pain to a horse will stop a horse's performance over a short period of time. A little bit of pain over a long period of time will also stop the horse's performance. So a saddle plays an extremely important role in the horse's performance, inasmuch if it's giving him any pain at all in there, then he's going to back off of it. It's got to be comfortable for me first as a rider, and then the third part of that is that the saddle has got to allow me to get my legs and my body in the right position over the horse when I need them there. If I can't move my legs forward, if I can't get my leg in the right spot to give the horse a cue, then again the saddle becomes a deterrent to the to the performance of the horse, and it doesn't help me. I hope that if you're thinking about an Orthoflex saddle, I hope it gives you a little bit more to think about. Said I don't know everything there is to know about a saddle. In fact, there's a lot of things I don't know. But I can tell you, I've had very good luck with these saddles. I've enjoyed them. I think they're excellent for the horse's backs. I really believe in them.
Now what I want to show you is the use of our UK model, our US English models. and one endurance right quickly. The balance shims are the same on most all of these saddles except the UK. On the UK, they actually wrap over the ends in the rear, and they are set up to cover the rear of the spring panel. Now you'll never need to run both the front and the rear at the same time, but they're going to come on your saddle that way. So you need to take the front or the rear off and try it with just probably no balance shims to begin with. Then put the balance shims on in the front and ride it that way. Take them off. Put the balance shims on in the rear and take the front ones off. Ride it that way. There's a few warm bloods and big horses that are big enough to make the front of this saddle ride a little high. That's why we include balance shims for the rear on the UK English. They are neoprene wetsuit. They Velcro on all of our Endurance and US English right to the cover of the spring panel itself. And as you can see, they're on the front here and stick on quite well. You have to take them off kind of carefully. The Velcro's stronger than the glue when it comes to neoprene foam. You can remove these and use as many as you need. All the system's the same. Still filling in the hollow behind the wither, not behind the wither, but behind the shoulder on the horse. These can be ridden directly on the horse with great results. Some people will put, just like Ellie Rawl, who is 6th or 7th in the nation in dressage standings right now, rides with a thin saddle cloth underneath her Orthoflex and leaves the spring panels just as you see them. If she uses any balance shims at all, she's going to be using them just in that manner. You can ride direct against the horse with it with no problem. Our UK saddle is built on a tree that I had to hunt quite hard to find. It's a bell-shaped tree, an old-style shape in English construction. And it cuts back just ever so slightly, but it gives the spring panels a little more room in their angle change than what a straight leg will give it. If I put a pedestal in here that extends out any further with a straight-legged tree, English product, which most of them are, then we do narrow up the front a little more, and you could have to use the balance shims in the rear a little quicker. Something else we do, people don't understand that an in-the-flap rigging is heavy saddle leather that goes all the way up and over the tree to the other side. On the UK models, we do not do in-the-flap rigging. This welting right here is relatively delicate. That seat skirt and this seat leather, which is chrome-tanned leather, are all that is welted there. And then everything's pulled down to the shape of the tree underneath. I cannot do an in-the-flap rigging with a welted construction like this because it is not strong enough to give you long life. But I extend the sweat flap that used to be on an English tree. I place it very well secured to the tree front to rear, right underneath the tree itself. And then we run the heavy nylon webbing down to our area where we put the billets in. This still acts as the yoke. It tightens. If you see with the angle we have here, when we tighten a little more on front than we do the rear. Now, you have 3 slots here. These are special made Chicago screws. They're not available in the US. I have them custom machined in the UK. You can simply break these Chicago screws loose, slip this unit, which is your billet strap assembly. It's one piece of leather, see? All cut out as one piece. You slip it out and you can move it into the slots in the rear. Now the reason for that, I give you a little more adjustability here going on to the big horse. And this is not my big horse. I do have a 17 hand horse that's about this tall. But going on the larger horse, if we go ahead and set this where the yoke is going to work like I showed you before, sitting still, we could possibly be a little downhill, but we're probably going to balance because as that horse takes a step, The rear of this saddle is going to come up, and we should balance. Again, you check balance when you're in the saddle. We go ahead and tighten any English girth. We scoot the saddle over a little bit, and we do it just like I showed you earlier. We push against the horse and we pull out. I got it right to that spot. Why did I tighten the front first? Because if I tighten the rear first, I line up to the back, and I will scoot the saddle forward some. On this horse, it wouldn't be a big problem, but on a lot of horses, you would scoot that saddle forward, and that's true with any saddle and any girth. The English rigging, whether you're on the ground or in a seat, is one where you can go back and forth and tighten. I can't get this one any tighter in front than what I had it the first time. If I get that hold, there we are. So this is where I'm going to mount, and I will be plenty tight to go ahead and mount without a mounting block. The trainer, Kenny Harlow, grabbed one of my saddles off the stand in a clinic at Fort Washington, New York last week, and threw it on the horse, put a foot in the stirrup, swung a leg up, and rode around. This laterally stabilizes. It does not let your saddle slide over. This gives your horse the ability in performance events in English to have a rider, and he knows where that rider is. That rider's not sliding around and all over the place, staying on the back of this horse, with the horse having to constantly readjust his point of balance for this unstable load he has on his back. And I don't care how good a rider you are, if you do not have a stable base, you do not become a stabilized load for this horse, because this horse is having to readjust that natural balance point for wherever the rider is during movement. This stays in place like glue. It gives you the horse, and any cue right here is no different than that fly right there. He is going to feel it, and he'll feel it much more because you do not have the head, the tip of this tree, the points biting into the back of the scapula and the wither, trapezius muscle on the wither of this horse. And a week or two, even if your horse is very sore, he is going to loosen up under any orthoflex. He's going to stretch those muscles. They're going to regain their strength. His mind is going to start working, not being interfered by all the pains in his body to where you have to use a severe aid to overcome the pain that's there to get through to his mind. Pretty soon, you're going to be giving your horse natural aids and cues, if you're not careful, that you didn't know you could do. So watch that. The other thing in dressage, and we found it many times, this is the UK dressage model. In dressage, don't start working your horse with everything he can do in the first 2 weeks with your new orthoflex, because oftentimes he will loosen, he will stretch and strain muscles that he hasn't been able to use as well as he can use without his movement impinged by the saddle tree. The freedom of movement is going to be there. He's going to have a little bigger trot, and you want to work him slowly for the first 2 weeks, not doing everything he will do as you're picking up speed on your training level of your horse. We'll go ahead and get the endurance cut back. I want to show you how to adjust the stirrup straps because they are different if you've never seen them before. I have a lot of people that order stitch downs, other U.S. English, premiers, even dresseurs. We can. The 3-position hanger bar on the U.S. models, we can cut the bar out in the back too and put this kind of stirrup strap on, which is Biothane. This is a Camlock buckle. It is made for us. It's stainless steel. I just popped it up. On this Biothane, we've stamped in with 30 tons pressure to try to get the numbers to read. And it goes to about 9 or 10, I believe. Yeah, 10 right there. So you have a positioning count side to side. You can adjust this Camlock buckle 1/100 of an inch, 1/10 of an inch, you can move it 10 inches. It makes little difference. It's literally so adjustable, it allows the rider to help balance themselves by letting a stirrup strap out on one side more than the other. Once you've set it for your length of stirrup that you're going to ride, move it down to the stirrup, all the way down. There's my cam lock right there. Now people think we've messed up because we put these sharp edges toward the rider's shin. Not so. That lets everything lay in that groove. The only thing you want to watch if you take these apart is be sure that you thread this biothane back through. Let me show you the proper way for hooking these up. We're going to go through from the bottom, see, and there's a silver bar there on the stainless steel cam. We're going to go under the cam, and then we can hook up and ride. If you're a distance rider, if you're a very heavy rider and you feel the need, you can slide it under the bar in the rear again. You will never have these slip. In 10 years now, we have zero problems with these. A few riders that swing their legs too much or whatever will go ahead and put a little sleeve over these to keep from pinching when they're riding in just jeans or something like this. The sleeve then slides down over that cam and it's right next to the stirrup. You have nothing here to give you a leg problem if you'll do it like this. And I might say, if you think you're real good and have a still leg and are very efficient at riding with a still leg, tape a bicycle headlight to your stirrups, one on each side. Go out on a really dark night and ride at a trot, posting, and see how still your leg is. You may think that you're hunting fishing worms and coons, and you will see the results, which are no less than biofeedback to having a rider with a still leg and a good seat, a balanced seat, because you can't do a still leg without having a good balanced seat. It is biofeedback like this for you to be able to see where you're going, because every time you move, you're throwing lights everywhere and you feel like you're a UFO going through the dark. It's a good way to learn. I'll go ahead and show you stirrup strap adjustment, which is trickier by far than what I just showed you on that saddle. This is the U.S. Dresseur model. You'll notice now that all Orthoflexes have very short spring panels in the rear because we have new, very sophisticated computerized machine hardware that goes up into the tree. We mount the spring panels now clear up under the seat, so we can be short but retain the softness to change angle for your horse and still have such functional weight-bearing area that, as Crockett Dumas said, this is all functional weight-bearing area. I don't need those big spring panels. He weighs as much as I do, and he usually picks up the best condition award every year for the American Endurance Ride Association, of which he's the president, always having used these saddles and helping me with R&D. And Crockett rode the UK Custom GP endurance model all-purpose. He said, this thing works great. Can you put those short panels on my saddle? My other saddles. He's got 6 of our saddles. I said, yes, I can now with this new hardware. So we did. He used it, and he tests it by putting people in it that doesn't own his horse, that may not be the best rider in the world, and he puts them on a hot, fast 50-mile or 100-mile endurance ride. And problems with loin rubbing on some of his horses that he has had with these people on, not himself, he eliminated the loin rubbing problems because we have gotten so short here. Our UK trees are shorter than this. The panels will be 1 inch shorter than the US for equivalent size. Now, in the flap rigging, all that sweat flap you saw under the UK model is eliminated. We have top grain saddle skirting that goes underneath this flap and on top of this flap. They're split so they're not too thick, just thin enough and strong enough to stay the way they should stay. There's nylon webbing sandwiched inside them too. Now your flap is holding your saddle onto your horse. And it works like a dream. It gives you the best of both worlds because you have no excess leather underneath there. You have horse. As you ride this and it breaks in, you're going to pick up a heck of a groove in this flap. And that stirrup leather is literally going to disappear, whether it's the 2-inch wide or the 1-inch wide. It will disappear into this flap right through here. And it feels great. If I have one that's been broken in, people will sit in it and ride it and want it instead of the new one. You can't wear these saddles out. And the tree's lifetime guaranteed because it's an Orthoflex tree. Now, 2-ply dressage type stirrup leathers with the sleeve and the buckle at the bottom. It's a tricky thing to do. We ride the stirrup itself, and this is the quick out safety stirrup, which I prefer. We ride it on the doubled nylon webbing where the buckle is attached and the layer of leather. So it slips right up to that buckle. The buckle goes up, and as you can see, away from your shin. Then the strap goes through the buckle twice. Once to hook it up, just like this. The second time to run it up into here. You don't have to do it the second time. It will go ahead and take a little strain from the tongue if you do, not that much. You can run it right down through here like this, and it'll still work because the buckle is going to stay, again, away from you. Slide this down, and you've got it like that, but your strap's sticking out. That's where we just ran it under the stirrup itself. Doing it the other way, running it through the buckle a second time, then we end up with it in between the layers of leather. A much nicer situation, and you don't have a strap hanging out. You certainly don't have a buckle up here creating a bump to rub your thigh. You can see the 2 slots from our stirrup hangers. We do not have safety hangers on U.S. saddles. We do not have stuffing on our UK saddles, and if you're a jumper, you can have a problem with that hanger popping loose and the stirrup strap slipping off on a UK saddle, so be forewarned. You may want to wire things up as people do in competition at top levels to keep the strap from slipping off the hanger, because you can have a worse accident that way. Oftentimes much quicker. It's going to happen more often if you're not careful, without the stuff padding and the pressure from the head of the tree pushing against that strap to hold it onto that hanger. You can't ride an Orthoflex very well at all, particularly anything real active with the English safety hanger popped down, because they will slip off. That's how these straps work. They're great for dressage. They're good if you don't adjust your stirrup straps all the time. If you adjust your straps on the trail like I've done riding these straps, I wouldn't recommend them. I would get our triple layered straps where you adjust from the buckle up here. It's quick and easy while you're in the seat. This takes forever while you're in the seat. While we're on a bit of this subject, the booties do come standard on all of our English and endurance models and our Western models. The color, size, and shape, there's a wide variety. You can get the white quilted cotton, you can get whatever you want. You can get a riding cloth that actually slips over the spring panels here, velcros together in the front, and slips across in the rear. And it is a riding cloth that looks like it's under a saddle with no spring panels. The spring panels are hidden underneath and directly against the horse. They started it in California. Your customers can tell you things sometimes, so you can now buy them from us. Stirrups, while we're at it, I never thought about to show you how a safety cam stirrup works. This set of cams, and I'll go ahead and take this hobble strap off of here, is a set of safety cam stirrups turned backwards. And this cam action, they're used for the competition roper. Now the ranch roper, particularly the cutter and so on, like the safety cams turned the other way. If you want your toe to go down and your legs to come back under you, you use the cams. This is a fixed cam in this stirrup. You use them facing the rear. When you do that, you put a little pressure in the stirrup, you see which way the stirrup goes. If that cam tries to line itself up in between these straps, so your leg comes back and your toe goes down. The roper then goes bam against the front of that fork. He's in his groove to throw that loop. He stays there. He does not have to ever worry about his foot going forward. And as Lyndon Green, owner of Midwest Roper News, who tested these, said, "Gee, I'm the worst in the world at it, and this has fixed me, and if I do manage to try to get one forward," he said, "that damn cam bites me right in the shin. It's a great teacher." He said, "It's cured my problems." This is the safety cam used in roping. I'll show you a set of safety cams used regularly, but it's just the reverse. Here we've got a set of cams. We do have these in the laminated oak, which you're looking at now, and they're about 4 or 5 layers thick. Very good weight to them, not too heavy, but certainly not light to where you can't find them. The cam here is a narrow and a smaller cam. We then have the larger cam. This cam is tilted forward. The curve of the stirrup on the back is for the rider, and we have just absolutely reversed what I showed you a moment ago. A little weight in this stirrup, and heel goes down. You become a proper rider, per se. A lot of weight in this stirrup, and that cam set at 33 degrees, it kicks your foot and leg this way. A cutter thrown to one side, that's where he's got to be. It keeps you in the seat. It makes it, used in this manner, almost impossible to work your foot through this in a runaway or something like that. Because the more weight you throw in it, the more it moves away from you. And it takes your foot and a leg with it. It keeps you planted in the seat on those sudden stops and or shies. It is a little item I came up with and patented, and the people that use them love them. It makes you, quote, a better rider, and you cannot throw your foot and leg out in a sudden stop through reaction time and just trying to use your leg from that angle. You do not have the force and leverage and immediate reaction that this gives you. It works extremely well, and it actually lays the stirrup strap more comfortably against your shin and turns it so that it is more comfortable ride as well when turned forward, as the safety cam is right here for wrench work, cutting, trail riding, and you name it. I have these cast in alloy now, a little heavier, which I like. You can find them easier, and they're a lot cheaper than what the oaks are. So you've got a choice now. Thank you. 4, 5. To show you, which I forgot to a while ago, why we have this slot here. If you feel, come on, Red, straighten up and get on all fours here. Thank you. If you feel that this is too far back, let's say you have one of our UK models that's a jumping saddle, and you want to be just a little bit further forward. Maybe you have a really long backed horse and you're ending up back here somewhere, and your billets are up here. We give you the opportunity to place those billets further back. If I cinch here, the saddle is going to stay in position. If I need it further forward, when in this case I do not for dressage, but let's say it's jumping and you need it a little further forward. Our scapula is right here, so we're right at the edge of the spring panel, and you can move the saddle further forward for your own preference if you want to. All you have to do is take these loose, scoot them back, and your saddle is going to slide to there. The amount of movement forward is disproportional to the amount of change on this strap at this anchor point. So we've moved our saddle forward probably 2.5 inches with just the change in location here, which is actually a little less than that. Stand up, Red. Come on. Come on. Now we have a saddle that's a little more forward, and you can use it there. However, if you were in dressage or whatever, you definitely have to have your balance shims in the rear to balance the seat. A saddle maker knows where balance is on the seat he's designed, because it's the flat spot for your ischial tuberosities in your seat. And when the horse moves is when you've got to determine when you're balanced. That's your own natural little bubble. Your own natural balance indicator will tell you. And experiment with the balance shims. You'll find it very fun and informative as to the problems you've had riding in the past. The dressage instructor says, get your legs under you. You're behind the movement of the horse. All you have to do is balance the saddle and voila. You see, fitting, quote, with an English saddle, stuffing panels is not to fit the horse. It's to do what we're doing with these balance shims. It's to balance your seat on that horse, to go ahead and carry your weight in the seat preferably, and not from the stirrups too much, and not as an unbalanced rider on the horse. That goes ahead and tells you about the most I can tell you on this. You will find that our English product rides very good. It rides very close, and has been accepted very widely. And there are more jumpers using it now than in the past, although we've had some very serious jumpers using it in the past. Jumping, the horse has more pressures than any other, and he goes out of that field quicker than any other, and this saddle will keep him in it much longer than any other. So we hope to see a lot more jumpers using the product in the future. Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for your time in watching this tape, whether you've just gotten your saddle or whether you ordered a tape to see what Orthoflex is about somewhat. The suspension system has gone for tens and tens of thousands of miles under the same saddle. It lasts. I think it'll last as long as a lifetime guaranteed tree. Everything on an Orthoflex is easy to repair. When you get your saddle, if you have problems, call us. We're the only saddlery that's there to answer those problems and to work with you through the years, which we've tried to do. And we are getting better at it now. We've expanded. We're a little larger. We make our own saddle trees, the only saddlery in this country to do such exclusively. And it makes a lot of difference. Product has improved, although the Endurance Cutback may be the same looking saddle. We've improved it underneath with that tree since you had your first one. The time that it takes to do this video is not bad. The reason we haven't done it in the past is we have changed products so fast. Every time we did a video, and we did quite a few of them if you remember and you followed us for a while, they were obsolete. Product is finally set in place now, and we are looking for very experienced and proactive horse people to be dealers for Orthoflex Saddle Company, to where we can move out and away from mail order and having to communicate long distance. Although we enjoy it, it limits our size. So if you know someone like that, or if you are somebody like that, give us a call, because someday we want to take that to people that we train as saddle fit technicians in Orthoflex directly to the customers and let them ride and try the saddle like they should first. Thank you very much. Lisa and I both wish you the best of riding with your new saddle.